Kings, Queens, how are you all doing?
How we doing? I told them we'll give them roughly about a couple minutes just for everyone to sort of come into the chat. So
Cool.
there we go. We're getting some people in now, which is good.
It should be good.
Yeah,
The last AMA we had really good feedback on from the community, and I think it's just good to have these chats every once in a while. And any questions that anybody has that they feel like isn't being discussed, great time to discuss now. And I definitely encourage everyone who has something to say about any discussion points to come up, and we just having like an open conversation about it. I think this is a great place to do that.
yeah, I agree. I think it worked really well last time as well when we had community
Yeah.
members come up and just express how they feel.
Yeah.
Hmm.
There are some thoughts that I have on the roadmap that we would love to discuss. We could save that towards maybe like the second half. At first, I just want to give everybody from the community a chance to come up, discuss any topics that they might have. If it is about the roadmap, then we save it to the second half. If there's anything else, let's hit them all at the first half, so we have enough time for that. Um,
Yeah.
I guess like while we're waiting for more people to come up, the last AMA that we had, we came out with like a feedback summary sheet with some action points, which I think worked really well. Because since we had that AMA, actually, when you look at market share, which is volume as a percentage of total volume traded, at least on OpenSea, the other marketplaces are a bit do like wash trading and things like that. It's a bit harder to measure, but on OpenSea, ours has actually increased since April, which is great to see. Obviously, ETH as a whole is going down, and there's a whole royalty thing going on and more private trades. But disregarding that, the market share has actually been increasing. So, it says whatever happened on that AMA call, and the changes that were made post that, um, whether or not they directly contribute to that, it didn't have a negative effect, anyways.
Yep. Yeah, just looking at that document now, um, there were some things that we had checked off as well, and some things that were going to be implemented later on. But no, I think
Mm-hmm.
we do the same thing for this AMA. We just, create a list of action items, and when community members come up, if you can please, recommend an action item moving forward as well, we can note that down, and if it makes sense for us, then yeah, we can definitely look at doing it. But coming out
Mm-hmm.
with something tangible every single time is more beneficial for sure.
I agree.
Cool. So, I mean, we're 8 minutes in now, so if anybody wants to come up, we just want to start it off with a couple of questions from the community. If anyone has anything they want to ask, I know there's a bunch of questions in the AMA Ask Questions channel, which we can get to. We'll save that for a bit later. But if you want to come up now, ask us any questions,
Yeah.
and we're happy to, have those discussions with you.
And it's just to while we're doing that as well, just to recap some of the changes, if anybody's curious. I think it was a post in my thing is glitching. Just give me one moment.
Hmm.
Okay, let's test that out. My audio is just playing up. Can you hear me?
Yep, should be working. It's working now.
Okay, cool. So I guess just to summarize the action items that we created from the AMA last time, and you can see this in I believe it's Lions Den. It was a post a few months ago. So one, the action items that we had was, developing a process guidelines for determining whether a project will deliver value, only taking on projects that can be actioned within a month, content planning, better graphics, shorter post approval chain, which we've had good feedback on with social media, specifically the new graphics. I mentioned that we're going through a branding exercise. It's not something that we're looking to announce in like one big hit. I'm pretty excited about like the new illustration style, at least the graphics that go out on social media, because that is part of, we've had some good feedback on that from community about, taking up some of these channels and the opportunity that might be there. So while that's already improved and we've had good feedback from that, that's something that we want to double down on. The projects within a month and determining whether a project will deliver value. I think it's really simple, right? It's like two pronged. Like, does this deliver value to the community, and does it deliver value to the project? And it's like, if it's not a strong yes to both things, we don't do it. And if it can't be done within a month, again, we put it to the back burner now. Dedicating founders dedicating more time to jump into Discord and Twitter. I've got into the hang of, actually greeting everybody when they first enter the community, which I know people have noticed on Twitter as well. We just had some feedback where it was like, I still remember when I think Asher9 like first messaged me when I entered the community, and it was like, it felt really different. And it's obviously it's a nice thing to do, and I think it's great just to meet everybody, because there's so many interesting people with some pretty amazing backgrounds that enter the community as well. So having that chance to just say hi at the beginning, I think is really good, and that's something that we've been doing pretty regularly. That's worked out quite well. Obviously, had the retro. We had new moderator guidelines as well. That was a big thing from the last call, if everybody remembers. Just about mutes and bans and things like that, and we made our stance pretty clear. Nobody wants to jump online and start banning or muting people like that. That doesn't feel right at all. From our perspective, we don't want any lazy lines banned. I mean, that's just it just feels weird. It's like we're all at least most of us are adults. Like, the last thing you want to do is not be able to enter a Discord. Obviously, if somebody's making it a terrible time for the rest of the community, sure, but this feels like one of those little things that spiraled out. So since then, it's been very clear, no lazy lions get banned. They personally have to go through myself and Nine. It's just one of those things. Even saying it, it's I don't think it'll ever happen, really, or if it does, it's going to be a very rare thing. I don't think that should be the case. Feedback channel, creating a process for collecting feedback. I gave out my email, and that's still available to everyone as well. If there's ever anything you want to say directly with feedback on the project, send me an email. I'm definitely open to it. I put that out last time, and we had a bunch of emails with thoughts on things like the roadmap, social media, the project overall, which is really good to get. So I appreciate everybody who sent that. There was feedback on lack of transparency, and our action item for that was more frequent updates. This AMA again being another one of those. One thing that we haven't done yet, but we have built out internally, is a community directory of businesses and services. This is an interesting thing, being able to network with everybody in the community, because again, there are some some pretty cool people who do some pretty cool stuff. So I think right now we started off, if anybody wants to offer special services or discounts or anything like that to other community members, that is one thing we have built out. We just haven't posted it yet. So the trait groups, this is something I'm starting to have more and more discussions with. So this has happened a bit later on. I think we've all seen what happens. If people do something within a trait group that the rest of the community isn't super happy with, and I think that's one of those dangers with being decentralized, and people can do what they want, kind of thing. Obviously, we don't approve, appreciate, or endorse any of these rip off kind of projects. I mean, it's been happening since the beginning. We don't we just ignore all those projects. So how do we better manage trait groups? Because I do think there's a tremendous opportunity, especially for IP building, which, we give out the IP, community members get the IP to their lines. So, how do we empower the community to build out on that IP? I think there's something really interesting with the trait groups, but we're still in discussion. And if anybody does have any feedback on that, again, my email's open, or even on this call. Developing a clear brand strategy. That was something that we hadn't done yet. Again, that's I would say we're still in the process of that, because we don't want to rush it out. We've got some new illustrations that I think are really cool, but that's one that hasn't been done yet. Stat Talk channel, having a North Star metric of revenue, and there were a couple others. Just being cautious at the time. If everybody wants to see the full list, of action items that came out of the AMA last time. I believe it's in Lions Den for a few months ago. We'll try and link that
Yep.
in Kabbalah. But with that being said, if you want to go into the AMA, if anybody wants to jump up, please feel free to request and we'll just have an open chat.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great time to just, pop in and ask, any questions that you want to ask us. So, um, feel free to just put your hand up and, we'll get you in. It's interesting.
In case anyone's wondering, no one's requested to jump up just yet, which is interesting. I don't know if it's due to the time zones because
Maybe it's late.
there's quite a few people in the Discord on the stage right now. So at least for the numbers, we'd definitely be expecting people to jump up.
Yeah, I would be expecting people to at least ask a few questions, which is interesting. But, I mean, it's clearly up to them.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Okay, maybe we can start off with, I've got thoughts on the roadmap. Having spoken to community members, to other founders, um, I've got some thoughts on that I'm happy to share. And then if anybody wants to jump up and ask questions, like absolutely feel free to jump up. Um, so overall with the roadmap, and I've said this before, like we are absolutely happy to do all of the items on the roadmap that we
Mhm.
said. I've heard some comments about this, and those things that I've said, they stand true. Like with our burn rate and the changes that we've made, there's no like discomfort or anything like that for us to do anything unnecessary. I've seen, people ask about VC funding. It's funny whenever I speak to, because I had private, obviously one-on-one chats with community members, some who have sold businesses in the past and, run P&Ls of, in the 8-9 figures. And, people have been in the space as well. And they're like, they're pretty much all advising against that. And, our thoughts are like, we don't think it's the right time or the need for something like that. So we don't have, I guess, like abnormal pressure to go and, raise a bunch of money or to drop an NFT collection right now or to do something that, isn't in the best intentions of the project just because we need revenue. Right. So that's something we want to be clear on. And by the way, just for anyone who's new to one of these AMAs, it's a bit more, open. I guess it's a bit more on the business side rather than just general, project and branding, things like that. So just I guess sort of to preface it, if you're wondering, hey, this conversation's a bit different. So yeah, there's no pressure on that. We have budget to do all the items on the roadmap. That's totally fine. But we have had a lot of feedback from community members who are asking like, hey, Ash, like, do we really want to do all these things right now? We've got Token, we've got Lionesses, there's the game, and, people are asking and looking at what else is happening on in the space. And, I think there's a bit of fear. And I get it as well because, I look at some of these things now and it's considering the current state of the market and where we're at, doing some of these things, like I agree, I think they could have potentially a very negative effect on the project.
Mhm.
So that's the stage we're at right now, where it's I just want to have an open discussion with. I just want to continue having these discussions with people from the community, which is why we haven't come out and just said like hey, we're making this change or doing that change. Before we make any kind of big announcement, we've learned like from the past that the best way to do this is just to have an open discussion with the community and understand people's viewpoints on it, and we'll, you guys know me and, Nine, like we'll listen to everybody. Not that obviously like some will have, more experience and, their views, probably have a bit more weight to them for the community, but we'll listen to everybody. So if anybody wants to jump up, absolutely. But yeah, so that's the idea with the roadmap at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, the discussions that we've had, Ash, with, we've actually been in a couple calls with a couple of community members now, just talking about, what their opinions are on the roadmap and whether doing, for example, Lioness is, appropriate right now, especially, given the market, or dropping a raw token, and where's the value going to actually be if we were to do something like that. So it's like we can, like Ash said, we can do those things, but it's like inherently, what value is that going to bring to you guys as a community, and what value is it going to bring to the project? Because if it's just another Lioness drop, and then we get the community like helping to mint it out, that's not something that we want to do. It's not fair to the community. It's not fair to the project as well when we want to take it. So
Yeah,
that's our
yeah,
mind. That's our thoughts right
absolutely.
now.
And yeah, and I get the I get that feeling of like if I always pull my shoes. I'm in the community, right? I know we haven't heard like updates on roadmap as much, and it's one of those things where it's like I've got a different idea on what we should be focusing on at the moment. Like at the beginning, we were just like, okay, let's create our presence. We smashed social media, but it was really about just building the community, that initial base, right, which was super important. And obviously, like we are where we are right now, and the results speak for themselves. I think the stage that we're entering right now, we really need to double down on building out the brand. And I think the best way to do that right now, from what we've seen, and of course we could test this out, but it's pretty evident from looking at the market as well, is we need to go double down on social media. That's one of my thoughts. Like if we double down on social media and also the IP, there, if there are ways that we can empower the community to build out on the IP that everybody gets by holding one of these lions. And we've seen other projects try and do some things about licensing their IP rights out to movies and things like that. But who knows how sustainable that is. So that's really our thought process at the moment. Just building out the brand, social media strategy, bringing in new people into the community as well, especially during a time where numbers in the overall NFT market are pretty stagnant.
Yeah, pretty much. And just thinking about like what, if we were to, look at doing something sort of like a big announcement, for example, or something like that, what impact is that going to have, especially during these times? Because we've seen, from what we've seen in the space right now, we've seen other projects, do these massive announcements, raising a lot of money. Granted, that would have been done, in a bull, not raising in a bear right now, but it doesn't have the impact that it did 6 months ago. So we're just trying to build out the brand for now, make sure our presence is doing these Twitter Spaces, making sure that we get Asher on as many podcasts as possible, get the word out there, and continue to build the brand during these times.
Yeah.
Cool. I guess we have
So
we have Firefly, who's requested to speak, so happy to bring him up.
cool. King, how's it going?
Hey, King.
Hey guys, I think I was on mute. So good to speak and good to hear you guys. And I think good to also see a lot of our regulars in the crowd. So big wave to all of them who show up every time. And I think either they have a Lion PFP or they don't have a Lion PFP right now, but they're still quite close to our project. So I like that. The same old OG community. So that vibe still continues. Some quick few thoughts on the three. I think majorly we have three major things on the roadmap, and then we have a lot of other things which can still happen. But I think there's Lioness, there's tokens, and the third thing that you mentioned is the game. So quick thoughts. Let's keep the Lionesses. I think that's pretty evident. Like at this moment, we want to expand to the NFT minting. It's difficult to raise. Also, it's diluting more. Having more NFTs and again means it's a dilution of the value which if you take the sum of all the NFT values in the project, you come up with a market cap. If the market cap stays the same and you add more NFTs, typically every NFT goes down, but value stays the same for it for the typical holder. If I use complete analogy from equity side, so that of course I agree. I think there's still time. But there has to be momentum and it has to be at the right time. Makes sense to wait and watch on that. Maybe the methodology of how the land has come about is also something that we should slowly think and take our time and see what the community thinks. Is it a fresh mint? Is it every king gets a lioness, or it's a king plus cup? So those things I think we can still engage in conversation, and it will be interesting over the next few months. Talking about the token, so token, yes. If the token is out of nothing, with back with nothing, it's everybody will either try to sell it or there'll be no demand for it, and then anybody who wants to sell it it'll just crash the value very quickly. So unless we have a story around it, uh, yeah. So there I have a second thought as well. Is yes, it's probably a difficult time for trading the token, but we should also as a community think that is it also the time where we prepare for it and be the early movers before the market again gets heated and there's a lot of activity. Will it steer certain things? Giving it in the bear market, will it steer like holding it? You're transferring the value right now to the holders who are holding strong right now, and its activation is actually later. So you get your token now, you're holding it. Snapshots are taken now, but the value is given later, or even of the thought that snapshots start now, right? So you don't have a single snapshot, but you have a 12-month snapshot. So the lines you're holding every month for the next 12 months, or whatever leading up to the token. Say the token is 6 months from now, so there's a snapshot every month, and you get a proportion of what you had. So if you had a line now, you get some more tokens back, in the future, and not just in the future that you just buy a line and you get all the tokens. So you're staggering that snapshots even today in the bear market. So that kind of creates that pull or holding power. Like, okay, yes, I'm holding a line right now. I will be considered for some more tokens than someone who just buys it one day before the actual final snapshot, right? So there's maybe a bonus mechanism that's given today. So think about that. I think more community members can also contribute. So it's something that it's not just put in the back burner. We are thinking of the token. We're thinking how the value comes, and we're putting longevity into it. And it starts now. Token won't be issued now, but your first snapshot could happen right away, right? And all the holders who are now okay, you get 1 point towards your, like you can do a point system, and how many points you have in the end is the ratio that you get your tokens for per lion. So things like that we could activate. Whether rarity plays a role in getting the tokens or those things, and whether holding a cub and a bungalow will add certain bonuses. So those are the mechanics I think will be interesting to start the conversation. Again, going back to the lines story, right? Do not put it completely on the back burner. We need to build up because these things are not simple and they're complex. So you could spend 3 months to do it, and you will eventually, when the market suddenly heats up, you will then, if you start that time, then you will not have the 3 months and you might be late again. So we could adjust the timing of the final launch, but conversations around it, some mechanism around the benefits on it should start very soon. So that's a building, right? That's we are building in the bear market. I think that really add value, and I'd like to hear the other members talk about it. Last one before I give it back to you guys is on the game. I think the game could be an interesting thing because it has no bearing on whether you're in a bear or a bull, right? In fact, in a bear, you want more. There are more people are more free to play a game, so you could get more captive audience to try things out. That's what my thinking is. The game is pretty much dealing from everything else, and it could also be. And game is a difficult thing, right? It's not a. You need users, you need interface. It takes time to develop the game, so this is the right time to actually start the game because you're not launching a perfect game on day one. It's going to be a very basic alpha or beta, and it's going to take a year. So if you are saying a bull is in a year and we are at the peak at in a year, the game has evolved over a year. You may not have the raw token to reward in the game. It may not be a play to earn. It could be a experimental one where people play, community members get in, and I don't even know what the game is about. Is it Is it a punch your opponent, or is it a poker game, or is it a mind? Is it or is it a trivia? So you have to see what the game is about and how our lions play a role in that, other than just having access to the game. So these are the three thoughts on the three big topics. Maybe back to you guys for your thoughts and other committee members. Yeah, if you'd like to chime in.
Absolutely. If anybody wants to come up and join the discussion, King, always appreciate you giving your thoughts as well. So thanks for jumping up. I think you hit on something that's really important. How do we reward the existing community throughout this time with, even if it's not the token, is there something else? We've been playing with the idea with other types of tokens that aren't transferable, like soulbound tokens. How can that play in? And we've got some ideas that we're testing with. It hasn't hit 100% home just yet, but I agree. I think that's something we should be thinking about, and I'm definitely open to that kind of discussion. I think that's really cool with the game. So, we're past the point where we've had discussions with Web3 game developers, VCs, and we've got an idea on quotes on what it costs to build and out like the game that we had in mind at the beginning. Obviously, when we did the initial Lazy Lions sale, was much smaller than the stage that it's currently at, right? Because when we started, obviously, from the initial sale of 0.05 ETH, we had to do it within budget. And it's like we still have budget to do it within what we initially had in mind, no doubt. It's just the brand has grown so much since then. And to be fair, maybe it's just because, myself and Nine are big gamers, but our expectations ourselves for this game have grown so much that we don't want to do a smaller type game that we can move on quickly. We want, it was going to be like a 3D, game that connects with NFTs. We have the game design document and everything. I just don't want to talk about it because I still feel like, this is something that we would want to do later on, but there are challenges. And, one of the biggest challenges with a game of this size is we would need to do a land sale for this. That's the biggest thing right now. We would need to do a land sale, and there are challenges in terms of developing the game in the current audience, right? These are discussions that we've had with studios on okay, how big is the existing Lazy Lions community? So that's one size. Then you look up and you go, okay, how big is the NFT community? And that's, another size. And both these sizes, obviously, for a full-blown game, that's multiple 7 figures going into 8 figures with marketing budget, which is obviously more than lifetime revenue of Lazy Lions. And that's, not even including expenditure. There's still not enough market size for that right now. So I think the biggest thing is I think even people who are creating these games right now for Web3, I think they expected a lot more entrance into the NFT space and not as much reservation from gamers, but there's a ton. So then when you go up from that, then you've got Web3 people who aren't in NFTs, and then you've got, outside of that, people who aren't in Web3 that play games. And, while that's a massive market, there's a lot of education that needs to take place. And obviously that's very expensive. And, who's going to do that at the moment? And, when you look at what's happening in the current market, we've seen some, big projects do some things. I don't want to name any out, but I think there was a performance at the VMAs that, literally promoted the game. And, if one of the hottest artists of all time, isn't able to have that much of a budge on mainstream, I think it really shows the amount of education and marketing that's going to be required here to build this out. So there are challenges with this. I strongly believe that gaming will be a massive trend in Web3. The question mark is, and from having discussions, we just don't know when. I don't know if that's going to be next year. I don't know if that's going to be in a couple of years. And so, if we put all of our resources into that, which we would need to get as well, because we don't have enough resources for that as it stands, that's quite a bit of risk. Quite a bit of risk.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on it perfectly, exactly, what our thoughts are behind the game. And as much as we'd like to, but we've said multiple times, we're massive gamers, and we've literally created the game design document for what we want. It's just, yeah, all those points are just the reasons why it's not the best time to do it. So, I don't know if you had
But
any other thoughts, Firefly, there.
yeah, if anybody wants to jump up,
Oh, that's fair. That's a good thought, and that's what exactly I thought. To match the current scale and quality expectation, it's going to be a massive investment just to put it out on the door.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Cool.
Can you hear me?
Justice. Yeah. Hey, how you doing?
Yeah, good, good. Sorry, haven't been to one of these before, but I am quite a reasonable sized Lions holder. I've been in here since probably a year ago when we had hit the peaks of 3 ETH for a floor price, and now we're back down to around the point 0.5. And again, I know floor price is not the be all and end all when NFT winter. So we've talked about a number of the initiatives that are being put on hold and absolutely understand the reasons why. I don't think a Lioness drop is wise in this sort of environment now, straight after the Cubs drop. I can't see the tokens being of much utility either. And I agree with you, there's not the market size you need for gaming at this point in time. So I suppose there's a lot of bigger projects being put on hold on the roadmap and absolutely understand that. But in terms of that market and brand building that you're talking about, we had Hazel on board at one point in time and she was let go. I hear there's a lot of work done on social media. We had a Puma partnership that sort of petered out to nothing. What I think the community is concerned about, and I don't speak for the whole community, is that there's probably a lot of stuff that you're doing behind the scenes, but the communications that we get through the medium don't tell us anything. So there's probably some fundamentals being done. So the question really is, with these things are being put on hold, but does being put on hold mean no work's being done to prepare for the time when they're actually going to kick off? And that means you're probably then prioritizing other aspects. But then what are you actually prioritizing? What's being done tangibly behind the scenes to progress certain things, even if they're not happening imminently? But we're just looking for some assurance that things are being done. And I know they are being done. You've got a big team. Not sure what the size of it is now, but yeah, tell us a bit more about what's happening with Puma, what's happening behind the scenes, what else is happening beyond just a few Twitter Spaces and social media. I mean, it just seems like all the big things are a long way down the horizon. What's going to happen more short term? What are the priorities? Thank you.
Sure. King, I appreciate you coming up and sharing that. Like, absolutely. And like, it makes sense. With the Puma thing, I would say like the last activation that we had with them was at their flagship store in New York City. And that activation, just looking at the numbers that they told me, it was their best activation with a partner. I think it was 4x their main KPI compared to the next best one. So that was the last thing that we did with Puma. And obviously that was in New York City during NFT NYC, and we had a bunch of line holders come down. It was a really cool event. We had a lot of good feedback on that. So I don't think it's, to say it's eventuated to nothing. I'm not sure about that. I know there were some questions about the allow list. I'm under NDA, of course, but we were in discussions about something that we're looking to do, and it didn't make sense for us to promote that whitelist opportunity at the moment. We were offered it. It's just it was during discussions, and it just didn't make sense for us to do that at the time. So we politely said no. In terms of our future plans with them, just consider, like, again, I can't speak to exactly, but there are things that we are looking at. But just considering how everything is going on in the market at the moment, those things have been delayed. So like that's where it stands with them. But again, the last thing that we did with them was in New York City at their flagship store, which, looking at the feedback from the community, was really well received. And I think, from the feedback that I've seen, most people appreciate the fact that we've been branding up with them, and it makes a really big statement on an NFT project that's just over a year old in the Web3 space, partnering up with a $8-9 billion market cap company that's been around for ages and is one of the titans in sports apparel, anyways. So that's that part. In terms of like moving forward, like what are the next action items? We have been working on this this initiative, which we're planning on releasing within the month. And I don't say this to like build up hype to something massive. I don't think we're not trying to do that at all. Just a new initiative, a spin on something that we've been doing that I think will help build out the brand and allow us to go even harder on social media. So uh, as well as that, like a social media content strategy that we've been working on that takes us back to everybody always talks about Twitter and during the early days and how active everybody was and how active we were. So that's something that we want to capture again, but on different channels, so not just Twitter. Because if we just stick to Twitter, then we're really only talking about really only talking about crypto Twitter, right? And the size of that, and that's obviously stored. So how do we get Instagram and TikTok and LinkedIn, and we've got a strategy to hit on those things. So expect to see that within the month, and we plan on hitting that pretty hard. So that's something else that we've been working on, as well as the rebranding that we've been going through. And I say rebranding, but it's more just like a focus on the branding with illustrations and things. Again, that's something else that's probably will be ready towards next month. We're just not rushing into that. But the other big things that we've been like focusing on, and I mentioned this during the last spaces. There's an issue that most or pretty much like all NFT projects have at the moment. It doesn't matter what size you're at, and it's that royalties are decreasing. And there was a big discussion about how NFT projects shouldn't rely on royalties. And I've had my thoughts on this, and I don't think trying to hurt the user experience is the way to go. We don't. I think there's something wrong about like punishing people who go out and private trade. But I understand why other founders of like big projects are talking about like removing utility from private trades and things like that. We don't want to really talk about things like that or look into that. I don't think that's the way to go. But there's an issue for these projects because royalties are going down. Some of these other projects have really high burn. We don't, so we don't have as much pressure. But there's a need to look into alternative revenue streams. And it doesn't matter who you are right now in the space. Even if you're at the top of the top, no one has an alternative revenue stream that is significant enough for them. Right. And I know that, some of these other big projects are feeling the heat, right? I have no doubt, especially, with VC funding. If you accept a lot of money like that and you're borrowing it from people, there has to be a case on how you're going to make that back. And with royalties going down, I know that people are facing pressure. And I'm speaking to founders every day, right? Like, sorry, not every day. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but I am speaking to other founders. And, I get the pressures that they're under. So we've been looking into alternative revenue streams, and that's a lot of like thinking and brainstorming and having discussions with people that and vendors that don't end up eventuating to anything. So that's the stage that we're at, and it's just one of those things that we're still tinkering with. We don't have the solution yet, right? And nobody has the solution yet. So we've got, again, I mentioned that initiative that we're planning on releasing this month. That is an attempt at this, and we'll try it out. And I'm feeling pretty positive about it. We'll see how it goes, and we'll get the feedback, and we'll just keep working on it, right? If it doesn't work at all, then we'll try something else. But I don't think that'll be the case. I think it will work, and it'll just be a process of refining it. So that's where a lot of our brain power has been going into, finding this alternative revenue stream, which from feedback from the community is something that people have been asking for as well. So King, I hope that like brings some more color into that question.
Thank you, King. And in terms of it, I'm happy with sort of how you've related. I understand. I think the key part that I just want to finally emphasize on is that communication piece, because there's been a lot of work done around that piece. I know you probably can't share a lot of it due to NDAs, but again, the transparency as much as possible is grateful. I mean, things such as the comics, I mean, we started that one out, and it'd be nice to, again, whilst we've got the bigger projects to come in the future, that there's just some short-term happiness or utility or sort of goals that we can sort of see on the way to a longer journey. And I'll just probably quickly sign off by saying there's a lot of really good questions to the AMA. So again, I'll defer to those ones, but thank you all for your time and appreciate the update.
Thank you so much, King. I think we will go through those Q&A questions.
Yep.
But if anybody wants to jump up, I think having open discussions with people on mic is definitely best. A good way to just have a quick conversation like that. If anybody wants to request to speak, feel free to.
Cool. I guess we'll just move into the questions now, Ash. We've got one coming up.
Yep.
Cool.
Cool.
Hey, what's up, guys? How are you guys doing?
How you doing?
Good, King. How you doing?
Good, thank you. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, I just wanted to say what's up. Been a Lazy Lion holder for over half a year. It's pretty cool. I think you guys were like my second NFT. So still here. It's just cool to hear you guys, and just wanted to say hi. That's it. And maybe I did have a question. If that was cool for you guys.
Yeah, go for
Yeah,
it.
go for it.
Cool. Oh, by the way, I'm Lazy Mouth from Twitter. I don't know if you see me, but I just like stole Loudmouth's name so I can like get his followers. And so yeah,
That's
yeah.
one way to go. Follow.
Basically, I guess my question is, as far as like IP rights, like I'm also part of
Mhm.
like Pudgy Penguins. I think it's a cool community as well. But like, what kind of IP rights? Like, what were you guys like focusing on as far as IP rights? Like, is there any other things like you guys have brainstormed or have seen other projects do that you think can be beneficial to like lion holders or even the cubs? I always like mentioning cubs because it's also like
Mhm.
you're part of the community with the lazy cubs. So
Yeah.
that's my question, I guess.
Absolutely, King. So, like, I'm having chats with community members at the moment. I think the trade groups is an exciting thing to explore. We just have to do it obviously in the right way. But I think that might be one way to build out the IP. And then, one of the most obvious things is to turn some of those trade groups to be able to create, real life goods that people value that tie in with the IP. And I think the question that we have to think about, and I'm always open to people giving thoughts on this, is how do we get people from outside the community to appreciate these things? Because I think that's really key to the brand building, the IP is getting people from outside Web3 to appreciate it. And I could be biased, but I feel like we have one of the most recognizable and like attractive brands already. Just looking at the lines, so I really think it's a matter of just getting the messaging out and really toning down on like who Lazy Lions is and what the brand is. And for us, we've had a lot of discussions about this, and I think the brand essence, you can really sum it up in one word, which is power, right? And I think that's power from the community and being together as well. Obviously, the fact that we're lions, but I feel like that's what Lazy Lions represents. So that's what we're in that process of that rebranding, and with the new illustrations and social media strategy that's coming out as well. That'll be honing out on that, and you'll be seeing that on social, on the different channels. But how do individual members build out their IP? Like, I'm open to chats about this. From what we've seen with other projects with like licensing, I just don't think that's sustainable at the moment. So I think it's right now the obvious thing feels like trade groups. But again, we need to discuss this more.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, King. That's a good answer. Like, I really like how you said, what's it called? Like, bringing your own IP rights, like, using it for, I don't know, like your business or, for your own whatever you have going on in your life. I think that one's a really good one. Um, so, but yeah, no, for sure. Like for example, the Pudgy Penguins, like I think they're made for it. Like, but basically they're doing like toys. I think they did like a partnership with some toy company. I forgot what it is. Need to look back, but like, stuff like that. I think is also cool. I'm not saying like we should make toys or anything, but like, there's a lot of like, utility and IP. It goes a long way. And then I'm also like I dedicate myself a lot of the time to thinking how I can use my IP rights. So as the time goes by, I want to see if I can like brainstorm something with some people and be able to bring my insights as well. But But that's always in the back of my mind, IP rights, and I think the name Lazy, like just the name itself, it brings a lot of attention. So we do have a good advantage over a lot of communities for sure. Just the name, the branding, the community. So for sure, I'm really excited. New things to come and for sure. But that was
Yeah,
just my question, and thankful to be up here. I want to give a shout out to all the line holders and just that's my 2 cents.
appreciate you coming up and saying that. And what I will say is, like, from this AMA to the next AMA, if people want to keep track of one thing, I would say social media presence and the branding of Lazy Lions, because, like I mentioned, those are two things that we've been working on these last couple months. And I know with the branding thing, it's one of those things that you could jump out in a day, but or you could spend forever on as well. And it's so important as we redefine it, because this isn't something that we want to keep doing, obviously. But I'm pretty happy with where it's at. So expect to see those two things. And I would say if you're going to track anything from now until the next AMA, it would be those. So that's what we're really going to be focusing on.
No, for sure. Thank you so
So
much. I'll be looking at all that. I'm always happy to help and support any way I can, and like I said, I want to also bring like value to the Lions, and I just hope we can all share with each other. So yeah, But thank you so much. Good talking to you guys. Good community and a good team. Hope everything's going good in your guys' life, and I'm out. Peace.
Likewise, King. Thanks.
appreciate you, King. Awesome. Let's go into the AMA questions,
Sure.
and
Yes.
then we'll jump back into live discussion.
Right, perfect. So there is a whole bunch of questions. If you're in the community right now, you'll be able to see it in under the private island category. It's the AMA Ask Questions channel. So we'll kick it off. There's a couple of questions from Blackbeard. So please walk us through the LL financials. How much ETH/fiat do you currently hold? What is your current average monthly outlay? And what are your projected expenses over the next 12 months? Is the first question.
Got it. Okay. And I think the reason people would be asking this question, I'm just going to assume here, is because they want to understand if Lazy Lions is in a healthy state financially. And I've said this before at the beginning of the space. I've said this, when the bear market hit as well. And like the short answer is yes. Right? There's no concern. There's no need for us to go do a massive raise. There's no need for us to go and do an NFT sale or like do something else that with the focus of getting revenue. Right now, we reduced a lot of our burns. So that's fine. We don't share specifics of the financials because we don't have to, and that's not how we're running the project. And we've been very clear about that since day one. I think that's more, that's more seen with like DAOs and things like that. And I appreciate a lot of these NFT projects and the way they run them. And I've seen others do it as well that aren't specifically DAO, and that's their choice, right? And we run the project, and we do it with the community, and I feel like we're transparent enough in terms of that regard. So, like, overall question, it's in a healthy state. There's no like alarming need to do anything. When we talk about things like the game,
Think you cut out there, Ash.
sorry,
There you go.
my head just iPhone. Can everybody still hear me?
Yep, you're good.
So when we first put out the initial roadmap, the budget for that game we do have and we could do. It's just the expectations have gone up. So we don't have budget for all the resources to do this next game right now. We would have to, do some things, particularly a land sale, which I don't think we want to do. So
Awesome. Cool. So second question is, how many full-time employees/team members currently work for/with you? How many full-time contract workers? Please describe their roles.
Mhm.
That's the end of the question.
Yeah, sure. So we've moved into like a bunch of contractors. So we've got like a fairly lean team now, but I think that works best. And yeah, just a bunch of contractors for all kinds of things. Right now there's 4 full-time, 3 part-time, and a bunch of contractors.
Cool. Are you, Asha, and Nine still working exclusively on Lazy Lions, or do you have other sources of income?
You're exclusively on Lazy Lions.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, that hasn't changed. We don't have any plans to change that.
Yeah. Please describe future avenues of income generation for Lazy Lions. This was a post that I had posted in Discord a while ago, just talking about how we're exploring alternate revenue streams. So I think this is what he was referring to, but you touched on it briefly just before.
Yeah, I mean, look, if anybody has like the 100% answer on this, like definitely come up and share it. And I'm sure every other founder in the space, no matter how big the project, would love to hear it. We've got initiatives in mind, one of which we want to release later this month, that will hit on this issue. But I'm not going to sit here and like pretend to know that we have the answer 100%. I'll tell you guys that we do, we don't, and nobody does. At least nobody has that revenue stream at the moment. So that is something that we're focusing on, and obviously that's something that we focused on the last couple of months. And that's we don't have. There's not something that we can come out and announce right now in this massive way. It's a bit different, the stage we're at. I think we're seeing this with other projects who are, copying some slack as well for not being so active on socials and things like that. And I think they're all just facing the same issue.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So please discuss which items on the roadmap you have decided to remove and why. I think we've already sort of touched on this topic about the roadmap items and how, we still, we just want to hear feedback from the community. For the most part on this.
We haven't decided to remove any of these items.
Yeah.
We want to have like open chats with the community, which is, I was hoping for this, and I appreciate Firefly King and others who have come up and shared their views on that. And I think we need to have more of these kind of conversations before we just go and make any like changes.
Cool. Please discuss the items on the roadmap that you are following through with and any new items that you are adding. I know that we touched briefly on the new initiative that we have coming out, but in terms of the roadmap itself, we have also included things that aren't actually on it. I can just throw out a couple of theirs, like Puma and the Lazy Comics, and now obviously this new initiative. So we are doing things that are outside of the roadmap as well. It's not just focusing solely on what's on there. But yeah, cool. So. Next question, have you had discussions and or negotiations with anyone about purchasing the Lazy Lions project? If so, give us a status update on those talks.
No, we haven't.
Yep. Perfect. Have you had discussions and or negotiations with VCs or any other significant investors about investing in Lazy Lions? If so, please give us a status update on those talks.
We've had chats with VCs, like numerous times throughout this project. Particularly when we visited the States as well. And, while I don't think it's a massive challenge to go and raise, obviously like going to raise at any time, it takes up time, right? Like I think for people who have been, in like the VC world before, like they know it's not a quick thing, at least usually not, right? Like this, they say to take about 6 months of focus. And, on top of that, you add the current state of the market. This is probably the worst time in like the last 10 years to go out and raise funds. And then you add on the fact that we don't have any like burning need. Like it's not like Lazy Lions is going to die within the next year or something like that. Then, you put all those things together and it just doesn't make sense.
Cool. Next question is, tell why we should remain invested in Lazy Lions. Give us your best pitch. Like what can we look forward to in the future, essentially?
I've never pitched or like sold anyone on Lazy Lions that way. I think you just got to look at what's being created, right, and jump into the Discord and connect with the community, right? There's over 140,000 people in the Discord. There's over 8,000 holders. Considering it's a project that started from scratch, it hasn't had inorganic celebrity boosts or massive promotions or VC funding or not that that's particularly that last one is a negative thing, but like none of those elements, and still managed to do 100 million USD trading volume and become a top 60 project of all time and probably one of the most recognizable brands in the space. Then you just got to ask yourself, I guess, what's next, right? If they can do that, then what can we do as a community together during this next phase?
Cool. Great. Next question would be, have you had serious discussions about promoting DJC to an executive role? If not, why not?
Banning DJC? Yes, we've had like numerous discussions with key community members. Yeah.
It's just not something that we've, sort of not sort of a requirement for us, given, where we are right now. But I think he does a good job as a moderator. Yeah.
Yeah, appreciate all the Raw Kings and mods and stuff. And like we said, we know last AMA there was a big focus on the like heavy moderating quotes and silencing and all that kind of stuff. And I'm always open to hear feedback on this. My email is open if you guys just want to like directly email myself and Nine, and if it's private about anything to do with this kind of stuff. But the feedback that I've seen lately is pretty good. So.
Cool. Next question will be, do you think that the removal of an open marketplace channel has been a positive for the project? If so, please explain why. If not, are you willing to open the channel back up?
I think if it lowers private trades, or at least communicates that this hurts the project, then yeah, it's a good thing, because projects need revenue, and I think that's a good way of doing it without hurting the user experience. Again, like there are founders, having these discussions, and some of them are having it openly as well. That are thinking of really like removing utility for private trades. I don't think that's the way to go. We've had these discussions. Like, we don't want to go down that kind of route. That's a bit gross. But I mean, if all that's happened is a channel where it's just like, hey, you can still post links, just don't actively try and evade creator royalties, which fuel the project. I don't think it's that big of a. I think that's my personal opinion, and I've heard a lot of people out, and we've had a lot of discussions, and I think most people agree that obviously like royalties is a good thing, and we shouldn't be trying to avoid that with putting in the marketplace. So
yep, cool. That was everything from Blackbeard. We got King Bumble. I think it's more of a joke. When Woozy and DJC on the team. I mean, they already do a great job already. So yeah, cool. Moving on, we got Jack Raw. So a couple of questions from Jack here. So one, why was Hazel not given an opportunity to show her talents and promote the LL brand at Cubs? She is widely respected, and your team pushed her out without giving her a fair chance.
I don't know about pushed out. That's
yeah.
I appreciate the question, but yeah, I don't think that was the case at all. I think it was just changes in the marketplace. Because you've had more time, sure, but there's a pressure on burn, because it's always for anyone who's run businesses before, and I know there's a lot out there in the community, and I've had these discussions, and I appreciate everyone who's jumped on calls, send me emails about this stuff. Like overwhelmingly, they were like, hey, like good stuff on reducing the burn, because that's what you got to do during these kind of macro environments, right? So yeah, I got a lot of respect for everyone who's been in the Lazy Lions team before, of course. But this was just one of those matters.
Yeah. Number two is just touching on private trades. I'll read out the question. So private trades occurs on every chain and every project. Why do Lazy Lions continue to think that this is the right decision? Since the removal, the trade volume has decreased significantly. Sure, some is market conditions, but we have lost an integral part of the project, and that's flippers. They create volume for the project, whether people like the strategy or not. I think this just ties into the same. This is the same question as Blackbeard's, but if there was any extra points you wanted to add onto this, Ash.
No, just I don't think we've affected the user experience that much. It's literally just a Discord channel, and we've just asked people like, hey, you can sell lines, of course, just please do it on the proper marketplaces. Yeah.
Cool. Number three, as a long-term holder who is on the edge of selling, what plans do you have that will make it worthwhile holding my lines? I've kept a fair chunk of my liquidity in this project out of my passion for the community and the early vibes, but the last 6 months have been extremely disappointing and zero transparency from the team.
Would love to know why, King, you feel that way, and maybe if that's something you want to email me about in terms of your thoughts on like the last 6 months, and like you mentioned, I think overall it's it goes back to like what's already been accomplished, and like if you're asking like what I'm excited about, anyways, I think you've got to ask yourself first off, like before I even go into what my thoughts on it, what do you look for in a project, right? And if you're looking for a project that is going to keep sending out, airdrops, or is going to keep doing events in real life, or is I don't know, is a meme project and is just going to be posting out on social, like shit posting on social media. I think you just got to decide on which project you want. Like, what exactly is it that you're looking for, right? Because obviously I'm not going to comment on things like floor price, and I'm never going to say, hey, like this is as an investment. That's not how we look at it at all. But I think those are the questions that you have to ask yourself, and just be transparent as like what project out there fits the bill for yourself. I think for us, like we've always seen the long-term value. I've been super clear about that since day one, because we know that, or at least we feel strongly that NFTs and Web3 are a technology that that will be a big trend, right? Like we see it affecting like many industries, and we feel like it's just a matter of time for more and more people enter the space. It's so tiny. I think all up, there's only been a little over 2 million wallets, and who knows how many of those are duplicates as well, right? So like that's not a lot of people, and so we feel like we're early on this like massive trend, and what as a community, all of us together have been able to do so far, like I mentioned, with something that is sustainable. It's just been us on social media, and our passion for what brings us together, which is these lines, of course, and we've been able to achieve what we've achieved so far. Then the question is, right, like if we can do that and that was all sustainable, will we be there on the other side? And that's what we're focused on, and I feel like there's a pretty good chance of that, of course. So again, King, it just comes down to what you're looking for out of a project.
Awesome. And last question. So what are the plans for Cubs and Bungalow owners? It seems there's a huge disconnect with all members of the Pride.
Sure. So we do, looking at Cubs specifically, I think there's a really good branding opportunity for us, something that we're discussing at the moment, and with new holders, and I've had discussions about this with community members as well. I think there's a really good branding exercise that we can do with Lazy Cubs. We've already done, Lions Teach Cubs before, but in that same kind of vein, and how can we bring in new entrants, which is something that we're focused on, right? Like bringing more people into the space. That's part of our mission as well, to empower people to enter and thrive in the Web3 space. So, we're looking at doing something with the Cubs specifically for new entrants. Again, our mode with this is, can this be done within a month? Does it provide value to the holders and to Lazy Lions? And if we can, and it's within our control, then we'll do it. And we think this idea that we can. So that's something to look out for.
Awesome. That's everything from Jack Raw. We got one question from Wowza. Can you talk about the recent conversations you had with the Raw Kings / Queens? Are they part of exploring different avenues with you? This one's a bit of an interesting one. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I don't think there was like a specific conversation. We just get feedback from them, like from time to time, and I guess I see it in the same way as speaking with community members one-on-one as well, and just speaking to the Discord and listening to our ideas and feedback. It's just another channel to get feedback.
Yeah, correct. So we've got Lil Dow 15 here. So communication / engagement with the community is something that we all established from last AMA is lacking. It was briefly better. What happened to trying to communicate with the Pride? Is it lack of time due to working on something else to better the Pride, or what?
I mean, with this one, I feel like we've stepped up on Twitter. I know, myself, I try and greet every new line holder, and people appreciate that. I think that's been really good. And I think with Nine, I mean, just looking at it, I know he tries and spends a bit of time every on the daily being in Cabana Bar and things like that as well. And
I think it's
I
think it's more like we can increase our social presence on Twitter and Discord, but it's more about doing more of the AMAs. It seems like that's becomes sort of important as well. So it needs to be like that balance between both. And I can understand that, but I get where you're coming from, King. But we are increasingly, trying to put, like I said, Asher onto podcasts as many as we can to get the, obviously continue spreading the word. So, any increased communication.
Yeah, that's right. I'm curious. Yeah, absolutely. Keen to get feedback on that. On if people think that's worth doing. These AMAs that we've been doing. I feel like we've been doing almost one a week with different founder or interviewer. which is good because it's a bit more external as well, right? So it's the added benefit of more people outside the community potentially hearing about Lazy Lions.
Yep. Cool. Got a question from Willie Anderson. So what are you most proud of at this point in the project, and what are your biggest regrets?
The community that's been built.
Mhm.
I think that's we've been able to all get together, and we're still active throughout this time. And I think about all the projects that we're very active, and one of the some of the top projects when we first started, and there were tens of thousands of projects coming out during that time. It felt on the daily almost, and I don't really see them anywhere at the moment. And so that promise that we made about being a long-term project, and we're going through that period right now where obviously projects are being tested, and I feel like we're fine, and we're going to continue building out the brand and building out the community as well, because I think that's something that's really important. It's part of our mission too. So we're proud about those things. In terms of like regrets, I mean, I don't think I ever promised that we would be perfect and not make mistakes. I've made a ton of mistakes personally. Yeah, I've made a ton of mistakes, and I think if I had to enter, startup world, let alone Web3 world, and not allowed to make a single mistake, I feel like that'd be very, very tough. So it's not something that I reflect on too long. We look at it during our retros and we go, okay, well, could we have done better? And we move forward. I think one of the things is communicating with the community before making big changes, again, which is like similar to with the roadmap. Like I've got views on it, of course, but I always just want to hear out members from the community, what they think about it. Open discussion, like with how Firefly just came up and suggested looking at ways to reward the community at the moment, even if we don't go out and fulfill certain parts of the roadmap. But that way, so there are members like during this time who are still getting value in a different way, and I think that's a pretty cool way to think about it. So that's one of the mistakes that we've made in the past, and we said we wouldn't do again, and this is an example of doing that.
Yeah, and I think with anything like that, we always see them as lessons instead of something just to learn from and what we can do better in the future. So awesome. He had another question. It was more about Rizio. So what happened with Rizio, and is the door open for them to come back for future work with LL?
Rizio is a king. I've got a great relationship with him. When we started, it was pretty clear, what his plans were for the future. And I'm not going to come out and talk about what he has. I'm not sure if that's private or public. But it was pretty clear that he would start off, help a little bit, and then we would end it that way. We do have other artists in the team, specifically the artist who drew up the because Rizio helped with the traits, and he put in a lot of time at the beginning, and obviously was compensated for that, and all happy days. But the artist who did the face structure and the mouth and the eyes and the overall body, but those artists we still have, and good relationships. So no, Rizio, he's a king. Great relationship with him, and just moved on. But expectations were set both ways.
Awesome. Cool. That's it from Willie Anderson. We got King of Praha, who has a couple of questions. The first one is more about the LL financials. So how much do you have in your vault? How are you going to spend it? What are the plans for the other revenue streams? I feel like we touched on this topic, both of these questions anyways. If there's anything you want to add, Ash, if not, I can move on to the next question. Cool. So
I will add.
Yeah.
Sorry, my Discord's just glitching out a bit. I will add that marketing spend at the moment. I'm getting feedback on this again from community members who have experience running businesses, sold businesses. During this market right now, we even had a recent discussion. And he was literally, I would be upset with you right now if you were doing big marketing spends. And I think we just have to look at other projects and what's been happening at the moment. And some of the big expenditures that are happening, and they're just not creating that ROI at the moment. I think what is key for us, which is, again, what we've been working on, and you will see this later this month and next month, I will say it would have ramped up, is what worked really well for us. And feedback, again, from the community is being active on social media, right? That really helped build out the brand. So I think doing that, hitting these new channels and empowering new people to enter the space, Web3 and community. I think those things can work really well for us. They're not massive spend, so it doesn't put Lazy Lions at risk. And to be honest, I think the ROI is even more tremendous than any of these other like big initiatives with celebrities and things like that at the moment.
Nice, cool. And that sort of ties into his next question about social media marketing. So, who is doing your social media marketing? Plans on getting someone to do this full time? Why is it communicating with the community still lacking?
Sure. So Twitter's, you got to look at each channel and be like, who's the audience that's on there, right? We've obviously got crypto Twitter, and that's a specific way. I mentioned obviously Instagram, that's different to LinkedIn, which is different to TikTok. We've got contractors right now. We've had feedback about repurposing our podcasts and the interviews that we have with founders, and then putting that out on social media, which I agree, I think is a great idea. So we've got, a contractor working on that at the moment. Again, this is one of those things that I would expect to see. Probably the repurposing more next month. And in terms of being active more on just social media, expect to see that this month. That's something that we're planning on going extra hard on, because I agree. I think that is very important.
Cool. Question number 3. So, short-term projects. What are your plans with the comic? This is a very obvious and easy step to achieve short-term, in my opinion. Are you going to try sell it IRL as well? And when is the merch going to be back? Those are important in real life promoters.
So the second one I won't say too much about just yet. But with the comic book, while it was well received from the community, I think before we explore a second version or something like that, I think we have to look at how can we empower the community to build out the IP even further, and how can Lazy Lions help with that, right? Before we just go out and do another comic or something like that. I don't know if that's the best way to spend resources right now. I would rather we continue having discussions with trade groups, which is what we're doing, and see if there are any ideas pop up that Lazy Lions can champion, and then that way the community has maybe additional resources or something where they can build out the individual brand as well. So if anyone has any thoughts on that kind of stuff, my email is definitely open. So I think that's more exciting, if that makes sense. Rather than us just doing one thing, is the way that we can set up a platform or resources, so the community can then they have access to go and build out their own IP with the Lazy Lions as well, which obviously helps out the brand too.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. Cool. Question number 4. Do we have plans for our own marketplace? Would you encourage private deals between holders to bring back volume and exchange PFPs to be able to get your forever lion and being a diamond pool? A little bit about private trades and marketplaces, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, with the marketplace, I'm seeing more projects do this. I've had chats and we've looked into it. Again, this takes time. It's just another one of those projects to implement. And I'm not sure of how many people would be using it right now. But this could be something. Yeah, if the community, if there's enough people who would use it, then yeah, we could. And obviously, I think one of the main benefits and why people would be asking, I'm assuming, is not just the safety, but even though I think OpenSea is pretty good with that, is reduced fees, transaction fees, right? I think that would be the biggest, the main thing that people are hoping for. So, and that obviously depends on how much what the fees are from the marketplaces as well, because they would have to charge something too. But yeah, again, so I guess to sum it up, it's something that we've spoken with these marketplaces before. We could do. It takes resources. I guess it comes down to what's the ROI for the community. If enough people are going to use it, then sure.
Yeah. Cool. Question number 5 and last question from King of Praha. If you are postponing raw tokens and lionesses, what do you want to see to be able to implement them? Are you thinking about a reward system like a token to get a lioness? Are you considering a swap from lion to lioness as to not increase the collection and devalue it?
Sure. So the big thing for me, if you're looking at KPIs, is active members, and not just the space, but in the community as well. I think overall, we need to grow the space. I think that's on, all of the top projects to go out and do. And, that's not a super simple thing to do, obviously. I think for us, like I mentioned previously, our focus is going to be on social media and those new channels, and, really building out the brand on those. So yeah, that's the main thing that we look at the moment.
That's pretty much it from King of Praha. We'll move on. We've got a question from DJC. Um, so one of the biggest challenges I've seen over the past year is the team's ability to collaborate and work with others. Over the past year, we've seen Rizio, Nin, Hazel, Steve, Docs, and a couple of moderators and some community members as well step down or leave the Pride completely. We understand people come for different reasons and go, but these losses are significant and have heavily impacted Lazy Lion's growth. Have you spent honest time reflecting on this topic? Why it's been so difficult to retain and collaborate with others, and how to improve? Do you think you're open and willing to work with others? And do we have, any future plans to add more team members, or are we just gonna, continue on with the smaller team that we have right now?
It's an interesting question. I touched on, obviously Rizio was asked earlier, like that was mutual, and we've got a ton of respect for each other, and even some of the other ones. Again, I've got respect for every team member who's here. During that run where there were more people in the space, and there was more that we needed to do, then we looked at hiring. Again, we had feedback that there were too many people in the team. I think comparatively to like other projects, it wasn't as much, obviously, but I agree. We're in this new space with Web3, right? And what we've done so far has, obviously, it's worked. And I think, a lot of that, if you look at the innovations with rewards, if you look at bungalows, if you look at referral tap, these were all things that, we were able to create because we could move quickly and because we were a lean team, right? And we're at that stage again. And, we've got, like I mentioned, we've got initiatives that we're thinking about that I think are on similar level to that. And we've been able to think about that because we're a bit more lean and we actually move a bit quicker. So I don't know if it's like a inability to work with others. I mean, I'm sure others could say from time to time. I don't know, maybe. I don't know how to best.
I think it's just
answer that, King. I don't think.
I think in terms of the current market, and you've spoken about it already, Ash, there's an importance on decreasing burn. So we obviously founders of the project. There's certain decisions that we have to make. So, yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
And just to add on to the question, do you have plans to add more team members or work solo for the new term of the project, which is pretty much at the moment, not at the moment, no.
Yeah, not at the moment. Solo. I think correct. Yeah, and there's a lot of contracted work that we do out for these kind of things.
Yeah.
Which works fine for us, and worked really well at the beginning, and we're in a good way working about it now.
Cool. So we got Woozy. So somewhat related to DJC's message, but a little different. I think his focus is on internal, while mine is more external. Do you mind sharing a bit about the current collab process? Do you respond only to the ones you are interested in pursuing, or do you deliver rejection notifications as well? I see a lot of people coming to Discord or DMs asking Lazy Lions to participate in this event or wanting to share this idea with you both or the Pride. I fully understand we have to be selective and mindful of the Lazy Lions brand in what we select from these, and the majority of inquiries may not be of quality, but surely there can be more we say yes to. Are there any improvements we can make to get these ideas and collabs in front of you faster, especially the ones that come from fellow members of the Pride?
I think that's something that we have to develop, and this was feedback from the last time, something that we haven't nailed down just yet in terms of what are we looking for in these partnerships? Yeah. So that way there's a quick a more thorough checklist, I would say, than how it's been at the moment, and go, okay, let's check off this. Let's have discussions. At the moment, we do review them, and most of them, it just doesn't bring we just don't see how it's going to bring value to Lazy Lions, but the community, the project, everyone involved. So it's it doesn't do that. What's the point in doing it?
Yeah. Awesome. So we got Moonshot. Trait groups have become a big part of the Lazy Lions community. Can you talk about how you view them? Would you be willing to publicly support them on Twitter and Discord, retweet Twitter Spaces, and possibly show up as guests or speakers? I think it would go a long way with holders and trait group leaders to see support from the founders.
Yeah, sure. So this is something, it's funny. If you look at my Twitter DMs, right, from a while back, it's hey, why don't you, support this trait group, jump into this chat. Trait groups are doing amazing things. And then if you look at the recent hop, it's hey, this trait group's doing this thing. Why are you guys supporting it? It's we haven't really done anything. We've retweeted and spaces and stuff like that. but it's not like we've gone out and like endorsed a specific subtrade or anything like that. I think we should look at how we can do this together in a way that's beneficial for the project. Like I think there is a lot of opportunity, but we have to be careful because it's decentralized. We can't control what everybody does. So I think we just need to be mature enough that if somebody does something that isn't in line with the rest of the project, that we don't start burning the house down. Because someone spilled some milk. Maybe tell that person to clean up the milk and leave the house intact. But that's what seemed to happen with the last collection that came out of one of these community members. So, mainly, from my thoughts, I think there is something really exciting that we can build with the trade groups, specifically with IP. We just got to have discussions with community members.
Awesome points. Cool. So we got a question from Gift King here. Can you
Hey,
speak?
Nine, can I jump in on that?
Yeah, for sure.
That was my exact question. I appreciate Moonshot's question because that's exactly what I was gonna jump up here to ask, was about the trade groups. And my question was, how closely do you watch what the trade groups are doing? Because I appreciate what you said about bringing in external revenue streams and trying to do that in the project. And I think a lot of the trade groups are experimenting. Some things work and some things don't, but I think they're reaching out to experiment. So two questions. One, how closely do you watch that? And then two, exactly, like, is there a way that we can get endorsement from the project where you vet it? And, obviously some things are good, some things are bad. I understand that, but where you vet it and then you give endorsement where maybe we can use some of the Lazy Lions IP, some of the branding that we're not allowed to use, or we do get an endorsement from the project. So those are my two questions.
Yeah, sure. I mean, just focusing on that second question, because the first question, a bit tough to answer. It's like, how long's a piece of string kind of thing. I mean, we watch, what's going on with the community. We've got moderators and feedback is channeled through, and it's like we're active on Twitter and Discord as well. And I get, countless DMs about this kind of stuff as well. We've chatted internally about like, how can we use, like, give the Lazy Lions logo and like trademarks and things like that out to community members, specifically with like the IP building side, and like it's something that we've discussed. I guess we just have to, like, there's always that big thing of like, we don't want to mislead potentially new community members into thinking this is Lazy Lions, and then they jump on and it's some rip off of multiple projects, and they go, oh damn, this isn't Lazy Lions, and we go, oh, like that could have been a really positive community member, and now they feel hard done by, right? And it's like, that's something that we want to avoid. We can't control what happens in the space, so it's like that's one of the issues. But like you mentioned, I think there is something that, like, we could definitely look into it, and maybe it doesn't even need to use the official branding and stuff like that, because that could just be, again, like I said, it's too confusing and too tough to manage. But I think it's one of those things we should have a chat about, King, and I just want to understand what opportunity you guys see that benefits the whole community. For me, I see the IP building, and what can Lazy Lions do to provide resources or like a platform to empower that. So, King, this is maybe something that we have a chat about offline, just in the appreciating everyone's time and going through the rest of the question.
Yeah,
I don't think there's anything that specifically comes out that you feel is worth discussing right now.
Nope, that pretty much answers the questions. So I'm very happy with the answer, and I think everybody, you are active on Discord, and I think some of the trade groups need to jump in the Lazy Lion Discord more, and then figuring out if you can give that branding to people, if there's a way to do that and officially vet, I think it would help some of the things we're doing. I'll give you one example, which is Lazy Marshall doing a WISTI, and the giving the stamp of approval might be useful on that one, and it would provide an external revenue stream. So if we could have an avenue to provide those projects to you to officially vet and see if they're worth exploring, that might be worthwhile.
Okay, let's shut up. Continue chatting about this, King. I appreciate you coming up.
Perfect. Cool. So we had a question from Gift King that I'll just go over now. So can you speak on IP rights? Given the recent project, I won't name it, but it's obvious. Use used a big identical characteristic on their art, exact image overlay, and is profiting off, in my view, stolen art. I know the founders view it as flattery and prefer to be non-confrontational, which is a little disappointing. How can a holder protect their IP rights if the founders won't protect it? Can the community DMCA a project? For example, Yuga takes a similar approach until a project attempted to damage their reputation. I'll say the LL project took on some reputation damage based on the community members' involvement and sentiment on Twitter.
I appreciate you saying that, King, and like I totally understand where it's coming from. I guess just to like just bring some more, like insights into the reality of this, right? So yes, like absolutely, we have the trademarks, we have the IP, and yeah, we could send a DMCA notice, which obviously takes resources on our side because that's something that a lawyer has to send. And we could take the project down as we could for the thousands of other copycat projects, right? If you want to name them that. The reality is, like, we can't. It's not reasonable to expect Lazy Lions to be on top of every single copycat project that comes out. There have been so many that have come out since the beginning. So, like, our approach is blanket wide. Lazy Lions does not endorse any of these copycat projects at all. Now, DMCAing, I've heard, Bored Apes' response on this as well. I think they've only done it one time, and that was, obviously that like really big case that blew up, and they DMCA'd them. Otherwise, they leave them alone. And I agree with the reasoning. The people who are buying these projects are most likely Lazy Lions holders. So if we go and DMCA this collection right now, all those people who have spent money on that collection, like, we'll just be screwing over our own community. And then they'll be like, hey, so this is what will happen, right? They'll log into their OpenSea. They'll see that, it's delisted. They'll go WTF and then jump into our Discord and then find out that, like, we actually sent out the DMCA notice. It just, like, Matt, put yourself in those shoes right now and how you would feel about the project, right? Yeah. So that's why it just doesn't make sense. Like, it's sort of like the damage, like, it's only just going to negatively impact them even more. Again, but like I've said numerous times, like, we don't endorse any of these projects. None of them are official. If you're buying into these, like, personally, I'm thinking, what the hell are you doing? But, like, that's your choice. But we don't endorse any of these projects.
Awesome. Cool. Moving into a bit of a more legal question as well. We've got a question from Mavs. How solid is the legal language that licenses the IP to holders, and is the language actively being reviewed in an effort to strengthen? Would there ever be a circumstance where that license would be revoked based on someone using their line in a manner that would be deemed detrimental to the brand? Is there anything that the team can do or is looking at doing that could facilitate the process of holders filing for copyright registration?
The copyright registration part, I'm not sure I understand that. I don't think people should be trying to trademark, like any Lazy Lions terms or anything like that. That's not good. That'll just, end up in a legal headache. I don't see the reason why anybody would need to do that. But the IP rights everybody gets, so unless if they're using it for, like, hate speech or something that, like, I think overall in the community and society we wouldn't want, then totally fine. The IP rights are yours.
Awesome. Cool. So Mile High, what projects are currently being prioritized? I think you've touched on this already, but if you want to, dig into that a little bit further.
Yeah, I think we've touched on this one.
Okay, cool.
Already.
Yep. Is there anyone who you are actively in talks with for the star seat?
So this was one that we had plans on, and it was going to be, like, celebrity focused. That's what we were looking at. Just considering what's happening in the market right now and, like, resource wise, I don't think, like, we've been discussing this internally. Again, chats with the community. I appreciate everyone's, like, thoughts on it. I don't think it's going to get the ROI that we want at the moment. I just don't, looking at what's happening in the market, I don't think marketing spend in that way is the right thing to do. It was that, and we were looking at artists as well. But, as time went on, it was just like it kept shrinking and shrinking the ROI. So it's one of those tough spaces where it's like, do we do this? But, like, it's not clear. And obviously we don't want to be wasteful of resources that could harm the project. So that's where it's at the moment. Like, again, we could do these things. We've got other ideas on how we, it's not a celebrity and it's not, a musician, but it's something that, hits more home and reflects the power, the brand essence, which obviously is power. But yeah, that's where it stands.
Perfect. 3, would the team ever consider bringing on a partner? Might need a bit more context with this one in what you mean by a partner. I think, Ash, what do you think?
Yeah, I need
Yeah.
a bit more.
Cool. Moving on. So DJC, what short-term things are you working on to bring NFT innovation slash fun slash curiosity back to Lions, like you did with bungalows, collectibles, the dApps, and rewards? Have you thought about community sentiment overall since the last Discord AMA and what actionable things you can do now to help bring more good vibes slash activity back to the Discord and community? Just over time, Discord online users have decreased as well as active members.
Yeah, great question, King. And I agree with like where you're coming from with these questions, and like needing to find that that passion and fire from like the early days. Which yes, like our focus right now is on that social media strategy, and getting those channels active. And I think that's the biggest opportunity right now for growth, right? Particularly with new entrants into the space. We've got a super relatable brand, one of the strongest in Web3. We've built up our position. So it's like, how do we now take this out to new channels? And I think it is something that people can relate to. Again, I mentioned that earlier. So, and the initiatives that we've got planned, again, we've got one later this month. But we are thinking about, how do we tie in, like you mentioned, right, rewards and like the unique way that it was done, and the way it worked out, and even things like collectibles and bungalows, with the fact that you can record your NFTs on the blockchain, which I agree, like we're all super innovative, and even those things that have been created, it's not necessarily that we have to go out and do a bunch more things, but we could just let's go promote those things that have already been done as well, and just get more eyes on them, right? Because sure, we're all used to bungalows and rewards and those things, but for people who aren't in the space, they haven't heard about these things before, right? So it's not like we necessarily have to go out and pump new things every single couple months. It's let's talk about the things that have been made, and bring awareness to new people. And I think where you're coming from with that question, like bringing back that activity on social media, I agree. I think that'll make the world of difference. And I've had a lot of feedback about this from communities about, hey, like I miss the old days of roaring all over Twitter and this and that. And, I agree. Let's do that, and on these new channels, and bring in more people into the space. So, yeah.
Cool. Awesome. We got a question from Justice, but I believe he came up on stage and, we responded to those, so that's fine. Dougie, we got thoughts on sub-brands as in trait groups building within a parent brand, then supporting this for the benefit of the overall product moving forward as a business model.
I think this just ties into the overall trait group discussion. And by the way, Kings, just being aware that we've gone over with the time, obviously I'm happy to stay on until we go through all these questions. So yeah, just being respectful of everyone's time. I know it's pretty late in the US as well, so this is going to be recorded.
Yeah.
But yeah, with the trait groups, I think this is something we need to continue discussions with community members who are involved in these trait groups, and even outside, and just get an understanding of what everyone's trying to achieve.
Perfect. Got a question from Lokes. A simple question. The Shopify merch store is completely empty. Since it's easy to add various products, do you think we can add a bunch? Maybe take requests? It currently looks bad on the project in the general to have no items. I know it's not big revenue, but it's good utility. It makes the project look stronger with very little effort.
I agree on the importance of merchandise, and those items are sold out, so just one of those things when the items come on, they're available for a limited time, and when they're not, they're gone.
Cool. Got a question from another moderator, Straight Rect. With the NBA not far away, the spaces we had with Sacramento Kings last year, there was news of doing something for the upcoming season, which we are not far away from. Is there still discussions with Sacramento, and anything still in the works to happen?
Yeah, so obviously under NDA, but I literally just had an email with them earlier today. We're looking at things to do. Yeah, we've got we start off with some really big crazy ideas. That's the way my mind goes too, anyways. And doing some innovative shit. The reality is, there's a lot of legal stuff, and they're exploring as an NBA as a whole, Web3. So it's at that stage right now. We're exploring these big ideas. They're coming back and saying maybe not this, but maybe this. Some of the things that we're discussing, they're a bit far away, but overall, yes, we are in discussions.
Cool. that's pretty much the majority of the questions there. We got Woozy. People on Twitter are posting Lazy Lions. Why? Any feedback on that?
Why not?
Why not? Sayers Adam says when burned. That might be something. That might be in relation
No,
to something that you
I
said.
think burning Lazy Lions, yeah, that would hurt a lot of people to the core. So no, I don't think that's anything. Yeah, that's not something that we have plans for.
Cool. And there's just a bit of feedback from Armagon in the channel as well. Judging by these answers, I still feel there's a bit of disconnect between the team and the concerns of the holders. The main sentiment from most of these questions has to do with not much delivery since Cubs, but delivery will mean what's being done to grow the brand, the progress on the roadmap, etc. If the team has been working on delivering these past few months, why didn't we get bi-weekly medium articles discussing specifics on what's being worked on? Yeah, so this is not
Yeah,
really
so I
much.
touched on this before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I know you're going.
I was going to say, yeah, like King, we totally understand where you're coming from. If you're still in the actual AMA channel, it wasn't more or less a question. But if you want if you want us to clarify any of your questions, you can just come up and just have, a conversation with us. It's probably a lot easier through, voice. So, yeah. Cool. Got another question from DJC. Are the funds for bungalows being used to bring more utility to bungalows? Is there utility you can add to bungalows as originally intended around the DApp and recording to blockchain? Can it be used as land, NFT, or staking, etc.?
Yes, we've touched on how it can affect raw token in the future. And at the moment, I think that like the biggest thing that we're focused on is building out the brand. Like I said that, and obviously that they're part of the overall ecosystem, so they're affected by that too.
Cool. I think we've covered everything here. Um, happy to give it like 5 to 10 minutes if anyone wants to come up and ask any last questions.
Yeah, and like Kings, Queens, I appreciate everybody staying on. These AMAs do tend to go on for quite a bit. I think last time we went over by like an hour and a half, so maybe we should just know to schedule it a bit longer. But yeah, definitely appreciate everybody sending in those questions and coming up as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the AMA.
Cool. Yeah, I think
we should wrap up. It's been
so
I
we'll
think
wrap
it's been
it
like
up.
an hour and 45 minutes now. But no, we appreciate everybody tuning in. This will be recorded for those that obviously couldn't make it. So yeah, Kings, Queens, we appreciate you all, and yeah, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.